I turned 72 the night my own family decided I was an open wallet with a pulse. And that was the moment I realized I'd spent decades being quiet when I should have been watching. Hi, I'm Margaret Collins, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 72 years old, a retired school librarian, a widow of 11 years. And until very recently, I was the kind of woman people described as sweet in that tone, that really means easy to step over. I'm not telling this because I'm proud. I'm telling it because once you hit a certain age, you stop worrying about who gets uncomfortable with the truth. So let me start where it cracked. The restaurant smelled like butter and lemon and money. One of those places with cloth napkins folded like swans and lighting so dim it forgives everyone's age. My daughter Claire insisted on it. "You only turn 72 once, Mom," she said, her hand already halfway into my purse to check if I brought my reading glasses. That should have been my first clue. Claire has always been very good at touching my things as if they were already hers. We were a party of 7. Claire and her husband Todd, my son Michael with his second wife Jenna, my niece Lauren, who I practically raised, and me, sitting at the head of the table like a paper centerpiece. Everyone hugged me, quick and light, perfume and aftershave brushing my cheeks. They smelled like busy lives and excuses. The waiter brought champagne I didn't order. Claire waved him off. "Put it on the tab," she said, smiling at me the way you smile at a child who doesn't understand how money works. I remember noticing my hands that night. Thin, veiny, a faint ink stain on my thumb from a library book I'd returned that morning. I folded them in my lap and told myself to enjoy it. This was family. This was love. This was what all those years of casseroles and babysitting, and don't worry, I'll cover it, were for. We laughed. We reminisced. Michael told the same story about breaking his arm at 10. And everyone laughed at the wrong parts. Todd checked his phone under the table. Jenna corrected my memory of a Christmas I hosted in 1994, like she'd been there. Lauren kept refilling her wine and calling me Aunt Maggie in a voice that felt rehearsed. Then the plates cleared. Dessert menus came. I ordered nothing. I'd already felt that strange tightening in my chest, the one that comes when a room starts leaning in on you. The waiter returned and placed the bill squarely in front of me, not sliding it. Not asking, just setting it down. Heavy. Leather folder. Final. Claire didn't even look up. "We figured it made sense," she said, cutting into her tiramisu. "Since it's your birthday dinner." I stared at the folder. I actually laughed, a small sound, because I thought she was joking. I waited for the punchline. Michael cleared his throat. "You know, Mom, it's kind of tradition. You always say you don't need gifts." Todd nodded. Jenna smiled tight. Lauren avoided my eyes. The number inside the folder had more digits than my social security check. I felt heat crawl up my neck, not embarrassment. Something older, something like being dismissed. "I didn't invite you," I said softly at first. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, like it had been sitting unused. "You invited yourselves." Claire finally looked at me. Her smile flickered. "Come on, Mom. Don't make it awkward." Awkward. I thought of the braces I paid for, the rent I covered just for a few months, the plane tickets, the emergencies that always seemed to happen right before payday. I thought of my husband, Frank, gone now, who used to squeeze my hand under tables like this when he sensed I was about to be taken advantage of. I missed him so suddenly it hurt. "I'm on a fixed income," I said. Michael sighed. Actually sighed, like I was being difficult. We all have expenses. That was the moment something settled inside me. Quiet. Heavy. Clear. I paid the bill. I smiled. I thanked the waiter. I even let Claire kiss my cheek and say, "See? That wasn't so bad." But as I signed the receipt, I made a decision so calm it scared me. I stopped being generous that night. I went home alone, kicked off my shoes, sat in the dark living room where the only sound was the old clock Frank refused to replace. I didn't cry. I opened a notebook instead, the one I used for grocery lists and book club notes. I wrote down names, and I started remembering things I'd ignored for years. That birthday bill wasn't the betrayal. It was the receipt. I didn't sleep much after that birthday. Not because I was angry in the way people expect. No pacing, no tears into pillows, but because my mind felt awake for the first time in years, like a house with all the lights suddenly switched on. Every little noise stood out. The tick of Frank's old clock, the refrigerator humming, my own breathing steady, controlled. I lay there thinking, so this is what clarity feels like. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 7:12 a.m. Claire. Of course. Morning, Mom. She chirped, too bright for that hour. I just wanted to say thanks again for last night. Everyone had such a great time. I held the phone away from my ear for a second and stared at it, like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. You're welcome, I said. My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. There was a pause. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where someone is lining up their real reason for calling. So she continued. Todd and I were talking. The kids' summer camp deposit is due this week. Remember how you said you might help out this year? I closed my eyes. I could picture her kitchen perfectly. White counters. Coffee machine I'd bought them last Christmas. Claire leaning against it. Phone tucked between shoulder and ear, already assuming the answer. I don't remember saying that, I said. Another pause. Sharper this time. Well, you didn't say no, she replied, a little laugh trailing after it. Like that made it harmless. I thought about the bill folder, the weight of it, the way it landed in front of me like a verdict. I'm not helping with that, I said. Silence. Then, is everything okay, Mom? There it was. The tone. Concern-flavored suspicion. I'm fine, I said. I'm just being careful. With money? She asked, incredulous. After everything. After everything. As if my life had been one long warm-up act for theirs. Yes, I said. With money. She exhaled hard. Okay. Wow. That's unexpected. We said goodbye like strangers who'd shared an elevator too long. When the call ended, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From adrenaline. I sat down at the kitchen table and waited for the guilt to hit. It didn't. What came instead was memory. Little scenes replaying themselves with new subtitles. Michael asking if I could co-sign just this once. Lauren borrowing my car and returning it on empty. Jenna hinting about how some people help with down payments for grandchildren they haven't even met yet. I'd always told myself it was love, that this was what family did. But love doesn't invoice you on your birthday. Over the next few weeks, I started making changes. Small at first. I cancelled the streaming services I paid for but never used. Stopped automatically transferring money into the kids' account I'd created years ago, just in case. I met with my bank manager, a woman half my age who spoke to me carefully, like I might crumble. When I told her I wanted to restructure my accounts, her eyebrows lifted. Is everything all right at home? I smiled. Everything is finally getting there. Word travels fast in families like mine. By the third week, Michael called. Claire says you're upset, he said, skipping hello. Did something happen? I pictured him pacing, phone pressed to his ear, already irritated. Do you remember my birthday dinner? I asked. He hesitated. Yeah. Do you remember the bill? Another pause. Longer. Mom, I'm asking a simple question. Yes, he said. But that wasn't a big deal. I laughed then. A real laugh. It was a very big deal. He went quiet. I could almost hear the gears turning, recalculating. Are you punishing us? No, I said. I'm stopping. For what? For being taken for granted. He scoffed. You're being dramatic. I thought about how many times I'd swallowed that word. Dramatic. Emotional. sensitive. Maybe, I said, but it's my money. He hung up on me. Lauren was next, showing up unannounced one afternoon with a coffee she knew I liked and a look of rehearsed concern. I heard there was tension, she said, settling into Frank's old chair like it belonged to her. I just wanted to check on you. I watched her stir sugar into her cup without asking. 3 packets. Always 3. I'm fine, I said. She nodded. Good, because I was hoping you'd still help with my tuition next semester. I didn't answer right away. I walked to the sink, rinsed my mug, took my time. I'm not paying for that anymore, I said. Her face changed. Not angry, offended, like I'd violated an unspoken agreement. But you said. I know what I said, I replied, and I'm allowed to change my mind. She stood abruptly. I didn't realize money mattered more than family to you. I turned around then, looked her square in the eye. Funny, I said. I was thinking the same thing. She left without hugging me. That night, I opened my notebook again. Added dates, amounts, patterns. It wasn't bitterness driving me. It was curiosity. How had this become normal? Then I found something that shifted everything. An email, buried deep, from Claire, sent months earlier. Forwarded to Michael. Subject line, Mom's finances. They'd been discussing me. My savings, my house. What would be fair when the time came? I sat there reading it, my hands steady, my heart cold. They hadn't been careless. They'd been planning. That was when I realized this wasn't just about stopping the bleeding. It was about consequences. I read that email 3 times. Slowly. Then once more out loud, just to hear how it sounded in the air of my kitchen, like maybe the words would rearrange themselves if I gave them another chance. They didn't. Claire had written, Mom doesn't really spend much. The house is paid off. If we're smart, we should start nudging her towards simplifying things now. Michael replied, agreed. She trusts us. We just need to make sure nothing gets locked up or donated before it's too late. Before it's too late. As if I were a pantry item nearing its expiration date. I didn't cry. That surprised me too. What I felt was something sharper, cleaner. Like when you finally understand the shape of a wound and stop poking at it. I closed my laptop and sat very still. Frank used to say I got quiet right before I did something decisive. He'd grin and say, "Oh wow, that's the librarian stare." He'd been right more often than not. The next morning I made appointments. Not dramatic ones, practical ones. An estate attorney, a financial planner, my doctor, just for good measure, because I wanted everything documented, neat, undeniable. I wore my good coat, the navy one with the buttons Frank liked, and I walked into those offices like a woman with time and intention. The attorney, Mr. Hargreave, was polite in the way men get when they assume you're there to confirm what they already think. He talked about wills and beneficiaries, about making sure your children are comfortable. I interrupted him. I want control, I said, while I'm alive. That made him blink. I explained, not emotionally, not accusingly, just facts, patterns, the birthday dinner, the email. I slid my printed copy across his desk. He read it, then leaned back. Well, he said carefully, you're certainly not obligated to. I know, I replied. I want to ensure I'm not pressured into anything. Ever. By the time I left, my assets were being restructured into a trust with very specific terms. No early access. No assumptions. No nudging. Donations earmarked for the library system and a literacy nonprofit Frank loved. Clauses that rewarded presence, not proximity. Care, not expectation. Power doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it feels like paperwork. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. That was the hardest part. Keeping quiet while the calls kept coming. Michael asked if I'd considered downsizing. Claire sent listings just to browse. Lauren texted me links to articles about estate taxes with a little smiley face, like she was being helpful. I responded kindly. Vaguely. I thanked them for their concern. Then came Thanksgiving. Claire hosted. She insisted. It'll be easier on you, she said, as if my legs were the problem. I brought a pie. I always did. The house was loud, chaotic, full of overlapping conversations and the clatter of dishes. I noticed how no one asked how I was. They asked if I was cold, if I needed to sit, if I wanted water, like I was a plant that needed basic maintenance. Dinner was halfway through when Michael cleared his throat. That same throat clearing he'd done at the restaurant. So, Mom, he said, smiling too wide, have you given any thought to the future? The table quieted. Forks paused midair. I dabbed my mouth with a napkin. I think about it every day. Claire leaned forward. We just want to make sure everything's organized. For who? I asked. For everyone, she said quickly. I looked around the table, at the faces that looked like mine in softened or sharpened versions, at the patience thinning behind their eyes. It is organized, I said. Michael frowned. Meaning? Meaning I've handled it. That was when Jenna spoke up. Handled it how? I smiled. Small. Calm. Professionally. Silence again. This one heavier. Claire laughed nervously. You didn't sign anything without talking to us, right? I felt something in me settle. A final click. Yes, I said. I did. The air shifted. I watched it happen. Shoulders stiffening. Expressions tightening. You're joking, Michael said. I'm not. Claire's voice dropped. Mom, that's not okay. I raised an eyebrow. It's my estate. But we're your family, she insisted. And I'm a person, I replied. Still. They started talking over at each other then. Questions. Accusations dressed up as concern. Words like fair and transparent, and we deserve to know. I let them talk. When they finally paused, waiting for me to fill the space, I said, You gave me a bill on my birthday. Claire scoffed. We're still on that. Yes, I said. Because that's when I realized something. Michael crossed his arms, which is, that you'd already decided what I was worth to you. No one spoke. I stood up, picked up my purse. The pie dish was empty, scraped clean. I'm thankful, I said, for clarity. I left before dessert. The fallout was immediate. Calls, messages, long emails explaining intentions, how I'd misunderstood, how they'd only been trying to help. Claire cried on voicemail. Michael got angry. Lauren went silent. And for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to smooth it over. Weeks passed, then months. Christmas came. I spent it volunteering at the library, reading to children who listened like every word mattered. I felt lighter than I had in years. Then, in early spring, the attorney called. Your daughter has requested a meeting, he said. She seems surprised. I laughed softly. She shouldn't be, because they'd finally realized something. I wasn't bluffing, and the consequences were already in motion. When Claire asked for that meeting, she didn't ask me directly. That part still makes me shake my head. She went around me, like I was already gone, like I was an obstacle instead of a living, breathing woman who still bought her own groceries and paid her own taxes. That told me everything I needed to know. I agreed to attend. Not because I owed her anything, but because I wanted to look her in the eye while the truth finally landed. The attorney's office smelled like lemon polish and paper. Claire arrived early. I could tell because when I walked in, she was already standing, arms crossed, jaw tight, wearing the kind of outfit people choose when they want to be taken seriously. Power outfit. Armor. She didn't hug me. Mom, she said, like it was a formality. Claire, I replied, setting my purse down carefully. I noticed my hands weren't shaking. That felt like a small victory. Mr. Hargreave cleared his throat and started with legal language. Trusts, beneficiaries, conditions. He explained it all slowly, clearly, as if reading instructions for a device she was sure she already knew how to use. Claire's face went pale in stages. "So, that's it," she said when he finished. "We don't get access unless what she decides." "That's correct," he said. "And only under the terms she's outlined." She turned to me then, her eyes shiny. Angry tears, not sad ones. "You didn't even tell us," she said. I tilted my head. "You didn't tell me you were planning my future either." "That was different," she snapped. "Was it?" She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "We were just being practical." I leaned back in my chair. "So was I." Her voice cracked. "Do you have any idea how this feels?" I thought about the bill folder sliding across the table, about the email, about being discussed like an estate sale waiting to happen. "Yes," I said. "I do." Michael didn't come to the meeting. That was his choice. He sent a message afterward instead. Long, angry, accusing me of tearing the family apart, of being vindictive, of letting my pride ruin everything. I didn't respond. Lauren eventually reached out too. Short text. Careful words. "I hope we can talk. I miss you." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, "I miss who I thought you were." She never replied. Here's the thing no one tells you about reaching your 70s. People start speaking about you in the past tense while you're still standing in the room. They talk about your legacy instead of your boundaries, your comfort instead of your consent. I spent years letting that slide. Not anymore. The real twist, the part none of them saw coming, wasn't the trust. It wasn't the money. It was what I did with my time. I sold the house. Not because anyone pushed me, because I wanted to. I moved into a smaller place near the library. Sunlight in the mornings. Quiet. I funded a scholarship in Frank's name. I traveled. Slowly. Intentionally. I made friends who didn't know my children's names and didn't need to. And something else happened. Without the safety net of my silence, they had to face themselves. Claire called months later. Softer. No demands. Just updates. Michael stopped calling entirely. Lauren sent a birthday card with no return address. I don't hate them. That surprises people when I say it. Hate takes too much energy, and I've finally learned how valuable mine is. What I feel is peace. Because the night they gave me a bill on my birthday, they thought I'd pay and forget. They were right about one thing. I paid, but I never forgot. And the consequences weren't loud or cruel or explosive. They were quiet, permanent, earned. So if you're still listening, if you're sitting there thinking about all the times you swallowed your discomfort to keep the peace, let me say this plainly, woman to woman, heart to heart. It is never too late to choose yourself. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply no longer being available to be used.